Joining us this week is Judah Piano. Judah is a certified financial planner with Barnum Financial Group, and his primary goal is to empower clients to focus on what brings them joy and prosperity while he handles their financial planning needs. Let's get into it. I'm Paul Blanco, and this is Small Steps, Big Wins. All right, Judah, welcome to Small Steps, Big Wins. I'm so happy to have you on the show. You know, we only met probably 36 months ago, and you and your partner, Scott, Judah is out in Seattle. Our paths crossed on a program we were working on together, and they felt that Barnum was a place that they really wanted to be. They looked around, and they chose to come to Barnum and partner up with us 3 years ago. And I know we'll talk a lot about this, but in the last 3 years, based on where you're going to finish, you and Scott, you 6 or 7 times the amount of revenue you guys are doing, which is incredible. We'll get into that because I know people are going to want to hear that, but how did you get in the industry? How did you start? Give us a little bit of a background here.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Paul. And thank you for having me on the show. I mean, I'm a fan of the show. I've listened to a lot of the past episodes, so I appreciate you having me, and join your platform. And really beyond that, before I start, truly, and not to be too much of a homer here, I've experienced the world not being at Barnum and the experience being at Barnum. And truly thank you for building what you have here. I mean, the culture, the vision, it really is magical. So thank you for creating what you have.
Thank you, Judah. And the cool part about that, I love it. And my saying that, we're only getting started. So thank you.
And, of course. I guess just to go back to give a little background on myself, I came from really, modest beginnings. I was born when my mom was in nursing school, and my dad is still a roofer, actually. So, very blue collar beginnings, a lot of hard work. Had a bit of a tumultuous childhood, learned a lot, had some difficulties with my mom's health, both mental health and physical health. Fortunately, she's doing really well today. But that has, I guess, laid the groundwork for who I am, learning from my parents, learning from what they do and the hard work that they did when I was young, really instilled a lot of independence is maybe the right way to say it. And I knew, a lot of people that you had on your show, they may have wanted to be a financial advisor, or they wanted to be in finance, or they knew what industry they were going to go into. To be frank, I'll be honest, I didn't know what I wanted to do. But what I knew for certain was that I didn't want to have a boss and that I wanted to be a business owner. And that was really what drove me into the industry, was my need for creativity and independence and to grow something was really what I was ready to put a lot of energy into.
I love it. And it's interesting. Most people don't know what they want, but you knew at least the intangibles you wanted from a career, and you found a business that matches up. The other thing that's cool, I thought very similar to you when I was coming in, but I had one big problem, right? I wanted my own business, but I had no money. So I had no credit. I couldn't get a loan. I come from humble beginnings too. So when I interviewed for this industry, it was like then was different than even today. We didn't have Zoom and we needed a car. Right. And I remember it was like $5,000. None of you could see how we're dressed, but we're pretty casual now. I suited up for 25 straight years.
Yeah.
You did suits and you needed a car, but you're able to get started in an industry like this as an entrepreneur for very little cost today. So good for you to doing that.
Yeah, that's well said. I mean, even being, relatively young in the industry, I started probably similar to, maybe you did, which was a desk and a phone, and go ahead, figure it out. So you're right. I mean, that's the lowest cost possible. It is just make some phone calls and see people, that's how you get started.
Yeah. And let's talk about that. Like, I know that your partner today, Scott, at some point you guys ended up teaming.
Yeah.
But how long was that early on, or how long was that, were you in the business before you and Scott ended up coming together?
Yeah. So we both had our own journeys before we ended up connecting. And I interned at an insurance company called Mutual of Omaha. So interned at Mutual of Omaha coming out of college and went and worked there, still just kind of not knowing exactly what I wanted to do. But again, it was a good path. I was good at understanding finance, but I wasn't good at really at the behind the desk kind of analytical work that a lot of my generation went into, being a financial analyst at Amazon or, a big tech company or something. That wasn't quite the path that I wanted to go. So I enjoyed communicating and talking to people and teaching, and I understood finance. And so it was just a natural path for me initially coming out of college. And so I was at Mutual of Omaha until 2015. Started there when I interned in, I believe it was 2012, and really just got, my understanding of life insurance, the basics of protection planning, the basics of how to be a business owner. I bought it's funny we use Salesforce today because I bought my own Salesforce license. It wasn't offered by the firm at, I think it was 21 years old. And so yeah. I'm an OG Salesforce user. And there was a certain point where I felt like I had outgrown the firm offerings at the time based on what I wanted to do. I got a securities license. I wanted to be in the talk about financial planning and grow a business. And really the firm was more focused on, blue collar life insurance production. Not that that's not a great industry, but it just wasn't where I wanted to be.
Got it.
I was recruited over by a sales manager who was at the firm and had moved to MetLife, the financial planning division, Premier Client Group that you were part of as well. And really, it was a huge restart for me, going from Mutual of Omaha, where I was, a big fish for my years in a small C. I actually did really well my first couple of years and made their version of leaders, and then completely restarted with people who were outproducing me, 100 times. And, I was securities licensed, but didn't know what to do. And so within those first few years, I really had to learn, completely all over again and really restarted my business in 2015. And fortunately, in that same year, Scott also came to the same firm, and he actually came from a different industry. But he came to the same firm, and we, over a few cocktails and a few joint client meetings, we realized, wow, we enjoy working together, and we filled gaps in each other's practice and vision for what we want to do that is really required for the future that we wanted to build. And it kind of grew naturally from there.
I love it. I love it. And by the way, most of the best teams, I always say like these firms are like dating services, people hang around and they're meeting each other and there's social events, and they ended up getting to know each other and they realized there's a fit. So you and Scott took off and started your partnership. My question is, was that a turning point, or was there other turning points that were critical to you? Because I usually ask, did you know you were going to stay in the business? And you knew that already. You knew this was the industry. You just knew you were the right guy in the wrong situation in terms of what you could offer. So now you're young in the career. You want to be in. You meet up with Scott. What was the turning point after that?
Yeah, that's well said. And, just to underscore a point that you made, I'm not going to lie, there weren't points where I second guessed the career. Just like a lot of people on here have talked about, it is a grind initially. It can be. It doesn't have to be, but for most people, at least the way I started and the way a lot of people are starting, especially when they're young, it's difficult. And, there's a saying that, your first year, you want to quit every day. Your second year, you want to quit every month. Third year, you want to quit every quarter. And by the fourth year, you wondered why you didn't start in the industry sooner. And I really experienced that through my first few years in the industry. But fortunately, and it was actually my mom, there were a few years where I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go that corporate route. It's just easier. It's stable. And my mom told me a few times, you really think you're going to be able to wake up in the morning and have someone tell you what your schedule is going to be? You think you're going to be able to live like that? You're going to be back in that career within a week. And she was right. And so
I have a mom like that too. So good for her.
Yeah, I agree. She knows me. And so the turning point was absolutely or one of a huge turning point was absolutely meeting Scott. And that was really where I was able to gel the vision of what I wanted the future to be. It's changed over the years, but fortunately, the basics of what that vision looked like, we're on that trajectory. And there have been a few really pivotal moments in my career. One was that moment when my mom said, don't leave, stick with it and, finish what you started. And another being absolutely meeting Scott and learning from him. And, I was fortunate to somehow be able to convince him to, set up the partnership the way that we have. I feel like I was a lucky one in at the time, and he took a chance on me, which was wonderful. And we've supported each other over the years through ups and through downs. And, another huge turning point for me was just recently. It was getting my CFP, my Certified Financial Planner designation. And just like I felt when I knew I could bring Scott into meetings who had a lot more knowledge and experience than I did, it really validated and kind of took away what was a little bit of maybe imposter syndrome is an okay way to describe it, and increased my confidence in a huge way. And really the third, and I figured you might ask this, again, not to sound like a homer here, was coming to Barnum. And there was, and we can get into it deeper if you'd like to, we don't have to, but there was a point where we had kind of one foot out the door from the parent company that we're a part of. And we're really fortunate enough to have a conversation with Elizabeth Heise and you. And, I was hesitant at first, to be honest. I was hesitant to give up some of the independence that we had created with our branding, with the direction that we wanted to go. And through a lot of discussions and, analysis, we realized that what your vision was, or what it is here, is almost exactly what our vision is for our team. And it matched up wonderfully. So
it's amazing. Well, it's amazing. Ed, keep going.
No. Those are really the primary three points in my career that I would point to, in addition to understanding, shifting my mindset from being a financial advisor to being a business owner, an entrepreneur, like you say, or a CEO, and, what will be the eventual route, I hope, and understanding that failure is a positive. And so through that process, leaning into the losses and leaning into being wrong and leaning into failing is something that I pride myself in now. And it was really difficult at first. So that's been a big change for me also.
Well, I love it. Well, let's start with that. So the first thing you learn as you continue to grow as an entrepreneur, right? You're right. Failure is a learning experience, but you learn to fail faster as you get more experience, right? You maybe take more calculated risk as you get more experience, but then, when you make a mistake, you get off the risk as fast as you can. So that's a really good one. The other one, for all of our listeners, experienced advisors or young advisors or just entrepreneurs that are out there, that there's some sort of credentialing in their industry. What you said, Judah, is critical. And everyone says that. They say that, I remember early career, 20 years ago, where I was sending out Wall Street Journal articles or Wall Street Journal ads, or ads in, the Harvard Business Journal or the Robs Report, all the magazines that the affluent executives and business owners read, where they were advertising, go with a CFP, go with a CFP. Yeah. And, we probably have 150 people in Barnum that have a C designation, but everyone has experienced what you did, right? You're taking away the silent objection for the customer, but you're also taking away the silent objection. You said it well about the imposter syndrome. And I think that was a critical one. So the other thing is, and I'd like to spend some time on your move to Barnum. I give you a lot of credit because I know that your decision was sort of made. Not only were you open-minded, but then you and Scott came and executed. And now, 6 or 7 times the amount of business is coming into the team. Why don't you talk about like that process, right? Like you make a move and now there's this like fire hose coming at you of stuff And it's only 36 months that you guys have, navigated the season. During that, it was COVID too, in the beginning of COVID. So why don't you walk us through some of how that was feeling and how you embraced it?
Yeah, it was really another restart. Fortunately, by that time, I had been used to, rebuilding what I was doing, with my move to MetLife and, a few iterations of the business that Scott and I were trying to create. We really were adamant about laying the proper foundation and doing the dirty work up front. And again, like you said, failing as fast as possible in as many areas as possible, because we felt once we had that foundation, there was nothing that was going to keep us from being able to grow on top of that. And that was what clicked when we saw and understood what Barnum had to offer from a lot of the people who you've had on this show and this podcast were critical in our decision to come over to Barnum because of that back end support, where a lot of what we felt was a hindrance from our ability to grow was already provided, at Barnum at a base level. And we were like a kid in a candy store. We were like, wow, we get this and we get that. Oh my God, this is insane. And so it gelled our vision for what we could do. And Scott and I have, in this industry, you can go a few different routes. So you can go many routes, but you can be a sole practitioner where you're a one-man show and maybe you have your support staff and you're naturally you have a ceiling for what you can handle, but you can always work with bigger and more complex clients. And, that's a simple way, because you don't have the complexities of a large team, to grow your business. What Scott and I wanted to do was grow as big and fruitful of a practice as made sense, but really as we could in our time in this career. And doing that at another firm was just really daunting. And Barnum, we felt, well, we can emulate what they did, right? Paul grew I'm talking to you, you grew what you have here. And there were other teams that we could help emulate and frankly copy a lot of what they're doing. And it helped create that vision and the foundation for what we wanted to do. And then came the team growth, which we can talk about as well.
Yeah. And let's do that. Well, I appreciate your approach, and I love how, you truly are an entrepreneur, and Scott as well, but you guys looked and said, wow, we can give up a little bit of what we're calling independence, even though you're still independence.
Totally.
All of the staff and myself all work for you. And that's always how we've done it here. So if anyone's given up independence, it's me, because I work for you guys. But, when it's all said and done, if you can plug in and utilize tools that you don't have to build, and you can keep your margins. I heard an amazing stat where most independent advisors, / RIAs have a 35% profit margin. I bet if I went around Barnum, it's in the 70s to 75%.
You're right.
They're leveraging things that are already built. So congratulations on you seeing that at such a young time in your career. And Scott, my question is, fast forward. What does the team look like 3 years later? It was just the two of you when you came.
Yeah.
What do you got? What does it look like now?
Yeah, so we had a budding team, I would call it, at the firm we were with previously. There was 5 of us total, and we really stripped that down to just us two. The people we were with, ended on great terms, but just weren't really in line with the vision that we wanted for our future once we saw what we could do at Barnum. And so it was just Scott and I who came over. I remember they were rolling out this potential state tax in Washington State, which is where we live. And so there was a lot of volume with new insurance applications. The weeks we came over to Barnum, Scott and I were entering our own applications, and, which we hadn't done in years. And so we were back to the ground floor. And now we have a total of 14 on our team. We have 7 advisors. 1 is going to be retiring next year, and a few prospective, in the pipeline that we're talking to, and then 7 support staff. Of the support staff, 3 of which are aspiring advisors, but still currently in a support role. And, we're spread across the country, which is really interesting. And I feel fairly unique to our team because from coming over to Barnum, I saw the potential to be, the West Coast presence for what you're doing, at least as much as we can until all of California, figures out the secret of Barnum and wants to come over as well. But, I'm here in Seattle. Scott was in Arizona and is now in Santa Barbara. And we're growing a small team that, there's another prospective member coming on soon in Long Island. And so we've really embraced remote work. And through the programs that you have created here, we work with clients all over the country. So why do we all have to be in the same location? And so that's been a huge change for us, is the ability to grow and scale in different locations. And I would say in the next year, we'll have a physical office in Santa Barbara, we'll have a physical office in Long Island, and who knows what's next, but those 3 are really what we're focusing on for now.
Which is super exciting. And it goes back to you guys being as open-minded and saying, with COVID, I say this every show, basically, we had a lot of negatives, but there were so many positives, and you guys took advantage of that. And listen, there's no right or wrong. Some people will say culturally, I want everybody near me. It's all good. But when you can find talent and you can hook up with them, and if you can make it work, I think that's exciting. So 14 people continuing to grow, 3 advisors of the 7 on the bench ready.
Yeah.
What's next? Like when you think of that, what do where are you guys thinking next 3 years?
Yeah, so it's both a difficult and an easy question. It's simple because it's easier to visualize the 10-year track. 3-year track is more difficult for me. But
go, give me the 10-year. Give me the 10-year.
Yeah, I mean, my goal is to become a household name, on the West Coast. I would love for Barnum West to be able to have, there is value, obviously, in working remote. There's also value in understanding your community and what's in your backyard. And so being able to establish a presence in California and in Washington, I feel like that's possible. But, speaking in 3 years, which I'm happy to do, is we really want to build out a more robust team in Long Island because we have an advisor there that is doing amazing. He was our first advisor addition when we came over to Barnum, and he was in New York. We had never met him. He was working from his parents' basement, which is amazing. And now he's, going to be at Newport, which is a huge accomplishment for him. I'm really, really proud of him.
And just for all the listeners, Newport is a place where Barnum holds their top producer meeting, and you have to qualify to be a top producer. So congratulations to him, and congratulations to you guys of getting him there.
Yeah. And, appreciate that. And the vision is really just continuing to grow the way that we have. I would love to, again, maybe I'm a little bit different from some of the people who you speak to, where their motivation is primarily from working with their clients and advising and building their practice that way. I love the business growth piece of it. I'm really passionate about the strategy and the complexities of how do we grow the business from the top down. And of course, I enjoy working with clients. That's why I'm here originally. But I would love to spend more and more of my time on vetting what types of advisors we're bringing onto our team. How are we going to grow our operational and support staff? And then working with a little bit more select few clients over the years. I don't know if that's going to be the case in 3 years, but maybe 5, 7. And inevitably, we haven't mentioned it, but we don't necessarily look that much of an age difference. But Scott is 20 years my senior. And so he will retire, and whether, again, that's 3 years, whether that's 10 years, I hope he sticks on as long as possible. But that transition over to me and maybe other future partners, to replace him is going to be a big piece of the discussion at that time.
No, it's great. And I love that. And listen, when you think of a team and, having 2 partners and possibly more someday, it's great that you have different skill sets. And you talked about that originally, how you had complementary skills. Now, as entrepreneurs, you come at it very differently. And as long as there's a middle ground when you have those conversations, I think it's super exciting. You talked about it earlier, how you were an early adapter of Salesforce. It's funny because I did the same thing when I had my years at MetLife, where I went to them and said, I can't use this tool that you have. I need to get on Salesforce. And that was probably like 15 years ago, 13 years ago, whatever it was. But, you came here, and obviously that's a big part of our ecosystem, and it's connective and stuff. And how did you embrace that as a practitioner, and how does it help you guys to run your business now at the size you are?
Yeah, we're still learning. It is something that, and you mention it very often, is that word scale, but at least here at Barnum, the way it's utilized is a focal point of that, and or a cornerstone, maybe you could call it, of your ability to scale. And so much of the marketing and the analytics and the ability to track where you're at in terms of your production, your business growth and ability is located in Salesforce. And it's been a huge change for us, and I was used to using Salesforce, but at our previous firm, we kind of got away from it, and a huge change to the positive. But one thing that we did just in the last year is actually add someone to our team specifically to focus on the analytics and our maximization of the technology and the data, and Salesforce is a huge piece of that. And oddly enough, that person is my wife, so shout out to her, and absolutely love working with her. But we're investing with our dollars in utilizing the technology and Salesforce to its maximum capacity, because we want to be the first team that you guys think of when you think of a pilot program. We want to be on the cutting edge of Barnum's usage of Salesforce, because we can see where it's going in the future. And it's really amazing.
I love it. I love it. And, as you're talking about that, there's a compliment around the firm about you and your team. You guys are in Seattle. Our home office is here in Shelton, Connecticut. So different time zone, different part of the country. But I always use this analogy of Barnum is like a college campus. And I say, you can be that kid that goes to college and be the commuter. And you go to school, you run home, and you have your part-time job, and you graduate, and everyone says, how was your experience? It was great. I got my degree. I learned a lot. It was great school. Or then you're the kid that, lives on campus and is in all the clubs and using the teachers and going to other things to grow and using them for job placement. And you're in 5 different departments and using clubs and all that. And it was the greatest experience ever. I can't believe I have to leave. And I loved it. And I say, don't be the commuter, be the other guy. And today I don't get the question as much, but in the old days I used to get, well, if you're not in Shelton, it's hard to use the resources. One thing I hear is you guys have Barnum West maximize the infrastructure that's here, and you utilize them really well. So is there a mindset around that, or is it just being, is it top? How do you guys do that? And I know you're the business leader, as you said. Are you being very intentional about what you do?
Yes, that's a really good question, Paul. And the answer is yes. And I appreciate the compliment. So when Scott moved to Arizona, we had a lot of discussion around our requirement to be incredibly intentional about our time together, because you can't just pop over, and chat with your business partner during the day. You need to dedicate time. And if we were going to grow a team, we really talked about having to dedicate time to be available for things when they come up. And so I think we were uniquely ready for a bit of that remote style transition and communication, just by the nature of Scott and I living in different areas, even before we came over to Barnum. And then adding Brendan remote. And so I know the analogy that Anthony, one of the other advisors used was burn the boats. We kind of did that. There was really no other option. And
I had to ask him what that meant. And now I know. And now
exactly. I know. I love it. I think it's a great, I think it's a really great analogy and not something that's always comfortable, but you have to do it. We put ourselves in a position where there was no other way to be successful and squeeze every drop of juice out of the amazing support that is available at Barnum. And again, a lot of trial, a lot of error. Trust me, still I'm mess things up every day. And now I don't just have a coworker telling me, I have my wife at home telling me because she's the one who's on top of me about it.
I have the same thing, so I understand that.
I know you do, exactly. And so I think we had that foundation built just by understanding what remote looked like in collaboration. But we understood what life was like without having these resources. And so it didn't matter if the person was in Aruba or India or in our backyard or in Shelton, Connecticut. We were going to soak up every possible opportunity we could with the infrastructure that's provided. And so I think it was both intentional and unintentional that it was in front of us and we plowed forward with it.
Well, I love that. And, one of the things I teach to entrepreneurs is, be intentional, but be super curious. And I think what you guys have done, and I love the analogy, like, I'm in the system. Why would I not squeeze as much as I can to help me to continue to grow? And I try to tell people all the time, I'm an investor and I'm investing in things that are going to help you grow because we want to continue to grow. So I appreciate your approach to that. Thank you for sharing it. My last question is, I know you're an avid listener. I know you're a lifelong learner. You're building an amazing practice. Anything else you'd like to tell the listeners that you think is critical to their success and, what they should be thinking or doing?
Yeah, I think that the way we've built our team recently has been with younger advisors, a lot like Barnum has, coming out of college or within a couple of years. And it is so critical for them to understand the process that happens in your first few years coming into the industry. And I think, I've said it a million times on this podcast now and during this discussion is you have to be comfortable with failure from every phone call all the way up to business management and growth. And so I would just underscore that as much as possible is especially when you're coming over and you're early in your career, I don't feel as though there's enough resources out there for the mindset of what's required to be successful through those difficult years. And especially as we grow remotely like we have, we really put a lot of time on understanding that mentality and being able to overcome it. And so mindset and being comfortable with failure. And really the final thing, and we didn't touch on it too much, is creating consistency in a routine. It's difficult to do in this industry because it's kind of an open book. It's a blank canvas. And so you have to draw your own borders and create your own structure and guardrails and whatever analogy you want to use. But that was really, really critical for me first starting out. And it still is today. I mean, I still have a routine that I'm a slave to, but I think it's a huge part of whatever success I've had thus far.
I love it. I say, be disciplined. When you're disciplined, it creates habits. When you create habits, it creates the behaviors, and then the rest takes care of itself. Well, Judah, listen, small steps, big wins. Thanks you so much for being on the show today. You had so much great stuff to share. What a great success you guys are having. I know I have Scott coming on the show soon. So
yeah,
wait to hear his side of the partnership and all that good stuff. But thank you. People, please, go back, listen to this one again. Go on Spotify and Apple, give us great ratings, share with friends, and, go impact more business owners and more advisors. So Judah, thank you again for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul. It's been wonderful.
Same here. So, all right. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for listening to Small Steps, Big Wins. Please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
All opinions expressed by the program participants are solely their current opinions and do not reflect the opinions their respective parent companies or affiliates or the companies with which the program participants are affiliated. Investments or strategies mentioned in this program may not be suitable for you, and you should make your own independent decision regarding them. This material does not take into account your particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs, and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. You should strongly consider seeking advice from your own investment advisor. Securities and investment advisory services offered through qualified registered representatives of MML Investor Services, LLC. Member SIPC, 6 Corporate Drive, Shelton, Connecticut, 06484, telephone number 203-513-6000.